Hello everyone and welcome back into another daily race C video, which is Kyoto Driving Park Yamagiwa. And I zoom in this track just to show you that this track has a lot of high speed turns and we need to really abuse the curbs. So my race 1, as you probably can tell, didn't really end up well. So I really tried to go through the chicane and unfortunately I got the curb wrong, and actually you can see what happens when you don't get the curbs. So why am I talking about curbs and why are the curbs so important? Because to be quick, you definitely need to use the curbs, but if you get them in the wrong way, you are just going to be losing a lot of time. And especially here, I put all of my 4 tires on the dirt and eventually I couldn't get the same amount of grip. So the tires became dirty and for the next couple of corners, it was almost impossible to keep the car on the track. Somehow I made it, but unfortunately Flash didn't. Once again, he jumped over the curb and got himself in the gravel or the grass. Really depends on which turn it is. But the whole point of the story is that in order to be quick, you simply need to use them. And I was always trying to maximize my speed through the corners, especially in this second race. And eventually it's not the same corner, but you will see that the curbs do affect the car, and they really do affect it if you hit them in the wrong way. Especially here, you can see it going downhill and then just hitting the curb a little bit differently, and of course spinning off. And once again my race was pretty much over. I was down in P14, and you can see once again you have to be careful as you apply the power because the car can slip quite a lot. And somehow by the end of the race I managed to climb up to P9, and this was just good enough to finish this race. Just close to DG Hardy, which is also in Digit Racing team. So race 3 was kind of a change for me because I started to realize what works, you probably noticed it, what doesn't work. And in general, I started realizing where I should release the brakes and not trail brake, especially as you're going in the downhill section. So in these high speed turns, it's actually better to just let it go, focus on the steering without too much braking inputs, otherwise the car will understeer. Of course, it depends on the car, but usually just using the insides of each and every single one of these curbs, especially slow speed turns when it comes to rotating the car. You can see that I'm always trying to get onto the curb, always trying to get that maximum amount of rotation. Unfortunately, sometimes it's too much. It's like too much speed going into the turn. You have someone in front of you, you cannot clearly see what's going on in front, and you can see Dimi made a little mistake, and you can see how it really affects the car performance, especially if you don't get the curb in the right way. You can lose up to half a second if you don't get it right. So once again, I'm trying to do kind of a strange move, because usually the Lambo has much more speed on the straight, and therefore it's going to be almost impossible for me to carry that speed on the outside of turn 1, which is very fast turn. You need to climb under the curb to rotate the car, 3rd gear, and then when you see the stage on the right, you put the power down. But unfortunately this just wasn't enough. So if we go side by side, and if you're on the outside of the turn, maybe you can get it. We will see later that it's very difficult, but it is possible. And then again, you can see really the difference if you don't get the first curb right. So if you just go wide a little bit, your whole section is just gonna be a mess. You can lose up to those 2 to 3 tenths on the straight. And even here I started kind of focusing on what works, what doesn't work. You can see that I'm getting to the inside of each and every single one of these corners, and in the end it really did help me to kind of understand the lines better, and I realized that I just need to let the car go. So without too much rail braking, without, let's say, too much turning inputs, just let it go into the turn, and eventually the car will have more grip. Because if you go downhill and then you start getting hard on the brakes with turning inputs, the car will be completely difficult. I mean, it's going to be a completely different story. It's just a completely different story to turn in. And of course, once again, they made the same mistake in the same corner. Once again, I'm trying to go for the same move as I did before, and this is lap 5. I knew that some of the guys will eventually pit in lap 5, and so they did, but I decided to stay out for 1 lap longer. And you might ask yourself, why? Why am I staying out for 1 lap longer? Because then for the next couple of laps I will have fresh tires, which means that if they start battling right now, if they lose a second and I do a pretty good outlap, which I did in here, I will once again be in the slipstream range, which happened. So it was kind of a good decision to stay out for one lap longer, and now I got fresh tires. I can follow the guy in P4, P3 and potentially even P2 and kind of focus on getting the same times as the leader. I know the leader was actually pretty quick in here, so I decided to, well, try to go for it on the inside, but I knew that Citroen is a pretty good car on the outside of this turn, pretty good handling. Turning of this car, well, I was quite surprised. Of course, you need to give the space on the right, and so I did, but unfortunately I couldn't make this move, and you can see clearly if you don't get the line right, you can see the difference. So it was, well, we were side by side and all of a sudden it's 4/10 down, so 4/10, one corner, one mistake. But once again I decided to try it, because why not? Let's go. I mean, we got 2 laps to go, there is nothing to lose. So 3rd gear, I'm trying to use the inside of this curb, which I do 4th gear on the way out, and now I know I got fresh tires, I know that I lost a little bit of time, well, more time than I actually needed to lose, and we are in the last lap of the race. You can see I kind of got the gap down, even to the P1 and even to P2 and P3, so I am kind of the fastest guy on the track right now. Maybe not on the track, but especially in the top 5. So I'm trying to see what can I do, but also trying not to be too aggressive, because if you try to go for a move, especially in this corner, it's not going to work. So side by side doesn't work here, so you have to be careful. Just wait until someone makes a mistake, and I think it was actually a good decision that I waited, because now I can kind of fake my move down the inside. I can get a better line for the, well, for the exit of this turn, get on the outside. Actually, the outside line gives you a pretty good exit. We're side by side, P4 and, well, P4 and P5, so it's kind of in the middle. I think that we made a little mistake right there, went over the curb once again. It was just the wrong angle. Then I get onto the gravel once again, and then 50-meter sign, trying to do the same move as I did before, but this time I get a lot of speed, and I think he actually had to lift because the tires couldn't, well, the tires couldn't do it. So we're rushing down the finish line, and I am in P3. So this was an absolutely amazing finish, and I had to watch this from a different angle. I know, well, the race wasn't much, we were just like following each other for the whole race, but you can see I got on the outside, getting onto the marbles, which usually isn't the smartest idea, but somehow I made this move stick. So it was just a, well, a little bit more speed. I think he also lifted because he was going too wide, of course, understeering, which usually does help, and kind of getting myself into P3. And now we are in our last race of the day, which was actually a pretty successful one. Once again, understeering, of course, because why not? And then again, you can see how it really affects the car and affects the line. But I started to see that the guys in front are actually battling. That's very early on, which usually doesn't end up well, because you lose a lot of time. Well, it just doesn't end up well. You started losing time, you started battling, and all in all, well, you can see what's going on. So they are going kind of side by side, 2 wide, 3 wide. I wasn't quite sure which way this is going to go, so just staying behind. Well, there wasn't much that I could have done, climbing on the inside of this curb, and then it happened. So one little mistake and we are up in P4. So I'm just trying to maintain my lines, don't do anything. Well, I just wanted to say don't do anything stupid, but then again I made a mistake, which led to me going too wide in this turn. I had to leave the space, and the Citroen, once again with that beautiful handling, is somehow on the outside of this turn. I thought that I was gonna be able to keep this one, but yeah, I know, I'm very surprised about this car and handling of this car. I'm trying to get to the inside, but also you need to leave the space on the outside without pushing the guy too much. So once again, it's the same situation, like a couple of, I mean, we had like a couple of these races, but this time I decided to lift and to take the right line, and it was the right decision because I didn't lose 4 tenths, 5 tenths, I lost only 1. So it was kind of a good decision, maybe give him a little bump so we didn't lose too much time to the guys in front, and it was definitely a good decision. So this is something that I learned, well, I would really call it experience, because sometimes you're just trying to push it, see how it goes, but sometimes it's actually better to lift, take it easy, and don't push yourself in every single corner. Just, you know, take it easy, work with what you have. So if you're on the outside, it's probably not going to work. So sometimes it's just better to just let it go, think about the future, think about what's going to happen in the next couple of laps, and so I did. So I decided to, well, stay in the slipstream, but now I see this is going to be interesting, and it definitely was. As I was telling you, like, side by side in this turn isn't necessarily going to work, and now the gap opened up, all of them are on the grass, and somehow I got the top speed out of this corner, and for the first time I think I did the right one. Well, it was quite interesting for me. I knew that Wayron does not have good turning abilities. Once again, sending it down to the inside and making this move stick. So it was actually a pretty decent one, and it was all kind of, I'm not gonna say planned, it happened, but it was kind of planned. Let's call it that it was planned. So P5, changing the tires into, well, I just wanted to maintain my lead, but now you can see that the guys will start battling once again, but I will try to use the same lines. I will really try to, well, usually use all of the track possible, and of course not make a mistake. And the things were actually starting to look pretty good in this one. So lap 9 out of 11, usually taking the inside of this corner, getting the nice speed out of this whole section. Braking balance is at 3, kind of maintaining my gap, but I also noticed that the guys started to battle quite a lot, and you can see what it does to your race. So guys, once again, it's P2. I actually won one of my races later on, but this was the most interesting one. So please let me know what you think about this, and if you had some similar experiences with this track. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, bye.